Welcome to this special episode of The Wolf and the Shepherd. This is the first in a series of 7 topics. So we've had some submissions about different topics that you'd like to hear about on the podcast. And we've taken those topics that we can't exactly make a whole episode on, and we've scribbled them down on a piece of paper, and we've decided let's talk about all of those topics and what you'd like to hear about those said topics. So, hope you enjoy this new episode of these 7 topics.
I'd just like to say I am going to try my absolute best to connect these topics, but the type of mind that could connect these topics together is normally the kind of person who writes their own diary with their own excrement and hide it under their bed.
Yeah, I could totally see that, because this is honestly going to be a struggle, and we're gonna get through it. Yeah, we're gonna get through it as best we can.
This is a reach. So anyway, first of all, we have the topic of aliens, because if you ever needed a very minor topic with no broadness to it whatsoever, aliens is definitely the topic.
And let's be honest, aliens, and for the person that submitted that, we're going to do some topics on aliens. But there's so much that can be talked about aliens. We wanted to throw that topic in here right now because it kind of filled that little gap that maybe we can connect the rest of this.
Yeah. Do you think if she actually knows a lot about aliens, she might actually become stupider about the topic by the time she's finished listening to our podcast on it?
That is quite possible.
Yeah.
I mean, especially after listening to this, the IQ points might go down.
Okay. Now, aliens, I chose this one. This when we say we picked it out of the hat, this was like 4 out of the first 10. All right, aliens. People want us to talk about aliens. At what point, given our fan base's knowledge of everything we've done before, would they think we would be any level of expert on aliens?
I think it's probably our area of expertise on the mantis shrimp, because that is obviously our spirit animal now.
It is now.
The mantis shrimp. And so looking at saying, hey guys, talk about aliens. You're so interested in the mantis shrimp, which obviously lives here on the earth.
Yeah.
What about aliens? So the reason we added aliens to this is for some of the other topics on this list. And of course, if you're talking about aliens, you have to go to one of the other topics that's been presented to us. And knowing the fans that are out there, the listeners, I hate saying fans, and of course we appreciate all y'all, but the listeners out there, they all know that we love Star Wars. And so one of the topics that has been presented to us is Jar Jar Binks. And I remember when the prequels come out and not knowing anything about Jar Jar Binks, and technically, he's not human, he's an alien. So we could probably have a whole episode about Jar Jar Binks, but the problem is it would just be you and I sitting here complaining about Jar Jar Binks. Let's be honest. That's all we do. We'd just sit here and we wouldn't disagree. We would just sit here and say how much we hate Jar Jar Binks.
He's a wanker. Can we move on to goats?
Yes. Is Jar Jar Binks a goat?
No.
Oh, he's not.
No.
Okay. But now we've entered into something that we might disagree about, because goats are actually cool animals.
They are cool animals.
Right, but how are we going to tie Jar Jar into goats?
Well, I don't like Jar Jar. I do like goats, so that's how I've tied in that part of the podcast. You don't like Jar Jar either. Let's be honest.
Well, no, I don't like Jar Jar, but
right.
I like goats.
All right then. Well, let's go to goats.
Okay.
All right. Positive points. No, give me 5 positive points about goats.
Okay. So if you own a piece of property or you're renting a piece of property.
Okay, Biden, 5 points about goats. Come on, son.
Well, hey, I'm trying to explain to everybody why they should like goats, right? So you can actually have a goat and tie it to a tree in your front yard, and you never have to mow the grass again because the goat's going to take care of that. You don't have to pay for trash removal because you can just feed the goat your trash. You also have a built-in amusement park for your kids because you can put your kid on the goat and let them ride the goat.
This sounds like you're kind of the goat seller of Texas.com, but you do get right.
Should we go ahead and pause the podcast and register that domain name because maybe we need to be the goat sellers of Texas?
Well, if maybe somebody could look it up by the time I finish this next part, that would help. No, the thing is, it's like, if you own a goat, are you allowed to own that goat in your county, in your city?
Sure.
Right?
And then you're also...
So I guarantee you're not allowed to own an alien in any of our cities.
That's true. But then
it's frowned upon.
Yeah, but you also have that part about are you a goat owner or are you a goat parent? I mean, where do we get from
therapy goat
dogs and cats
yeah.
in saying, I'm a pet parent. I've adopted this animal.
What do you love most about goats?
I love the fact that they're self-sufficient.
What do you mean?
They've figured out a way that they'll eat anything. You don't have to really take care of them. They're good being left alone. They're good hanging out with you. So why not have a goat?
You said this exact reason for the chicken.
Yeah, but chicken tastes much better than goat. Let's be honest.
Oh, not in good quality meals.
I guess it depends on the way you cook them.
Nah, come on. Goat curry compared to a chicken.
Oh, don't get me started on curry. I'm not a fan of curry.
No, but now you've lived in Texas your whole life, right?
I have.
You have. Now you must know what you consider soul food.
Yeah. See, this is where I depart with several people in Texas as far as soul food's considered because I'm not a vegetable fan. I've always said that if it didn't walk or swim, I don't want to eat it. And there's a lot of soul food that is vegetable based, and I am not a fan. I would rather my food eat the food that they're talking about that gets prepared. I'm not a collard greens fan. I'm not a vegetable fan. I don't want to eat asparagus. I don't want my urine to smell and look funny. That's not my thing. Never going to be my thing.
Now that's kind of interesting because I've always been very worried about your urine.
I know you do, and you text me at least twice a week saying, "Hey, how's your urine?"
Is it?
And I say,
dark?
Don't worry about that. It's not toothpaste yet. I don't have the diabetes, so I'm doing okay. But I appreciate your concern.
Well, you have to remember the whole point of soul food is that something which not only maybe subliminally meets your nutritional requirements, as in it's something that actually brings a peace and release from anxiety. And, stress is one of the biggest killers. So a food that actually releases anxiety and actually makes you feel good for a couple of days because you ate a soul food, a comfort meal. I mean, what if you had to say what would be your comfort meal if you had a really horrible week and say like you've gone like, I don't know, like maybe 222 hours of bad stuff during the week and it's still Tuesday, what would you choose for your comfort meal?
I would definitely have to say it would have to be a big old ribeye steak.
Yeah.
With a giant mashed potato just shoved full of bacon bits and cheese and butter and sour cream. That's going to be my go-to.
Now, I'm getting this. You're not going to get this from the restaurant. You're going to have to buy this stuff and make it for yourself.
Absolutely. Because I'm going to save half my money making it myself,
Right,
and it's going to taste twice as good.
Yeah. No, that's what I figured. But every now and then you do need a really good comfort meal because, I mean, I honestly do believe, I mean, you take away from various sayings like, you know, the way to a man's heart is through his stomach.
Yep.
You know, I really do think as a man, if you learn how to cook, and as you know, it's only been over the last 18 months, I really decided to educate myself on how to cook all different meats and vegetables. And, you know, I really found a whole new world of being able to make all these different meals. And it absolutely changed my mood on so many different levels, you know. And I do think that, you know, if as a man, especially if you can make meals which satisfy your palate, and you know it, like I said, just takes away that stress.
Sure,
I think it brings out a whole new you in terms of.
Let's be honest. Food cooked at home always tastes better, and I think that's where soul food kind of came from. If you have, let's say, chicken or turkey or a steak or whatever, and you cook it yourself, you know, it kind of goes back to that whole fisherman attitude. If you catch a fish out of a lake, out of a river, out of an ocean or whatever, you catch that fish, you clean that fish, you season that fish, you cook that fish, and you eat that fish is always going to taste better than any fish you'll ever have in a restaurant. So it kind of goes back to looking at white grapes.
Yeah, white grapes was one of these random words which I had thrown up. And I was kind of confused about it at first, but then I looked at, you know, a lot of the stuff I look up on my, you know, Google history in terms of healthy meals and all this stuff. And it came up as something which, you know, is in terms of a snack or you crush it, it has so many beneficial, you know, effects. On the body,
the antioxidants, all that good stuff.
So I mean, it snuck in. I mean, you know, white grapes snuck in through the back door, which,
and the problem that we had with the white grapes was you didn't necessarily say whether or not they were seeded or seedless, because the problem with grapes, if you're eating grapes and they're seeded grapes, then you've got to sit there and you got to chew on the grape, then you got that seed in your mouth, then you got to spit it somewhere. And you can create a big giant mess trying to get rid of those seeds in the grapes.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. White grapes matter.
They do.
They do.
Yes. Yeah. White grapes do matter.
Yeah.
There's lots of wine that's made off of white grapes. And for those people that like wine that is subpar from wine made with red grapes, it's fine. Nobody's judging you. It's totally okay. But I don't think anybody likes eating a grape with the seed in the middle.
I don't know, because I mean, again, if there was any planning whatsoever in the grape DNA RNA, they would have figured there's going to be a lot of middle-class women here, specifically white women, drinking the juice of our fruit.
Right.
How can we best spread our seed?
Yeah. And the last thing you're going to want to do is upset those, like you say, those white women, those Karens, to throw back to one of our prior podcasts, because back in the day, there was nothing worse than going to a certain video store and wanting a movie that was just released and then finding out that movie wasn't there. And way back in the day, when you went to Blockbuster Video and you said, do you have this movie available? And they said no. It was acceptable that you believed them and you said, okay, well, I'm not going to watch this movie tonight. Nowadays, with Netflix and Hulu and Amazon Video and Disney Plus and all the things that are out there, that wouldn't be acceptable. But if you look back then, the woman that said, I don't want to chew that grape and spit that seed out and then go to Blockbuster, it just wouldn't happen anymore. It really wouldn't.
Yeah, I just want to point out that at this point in time we are not monetarized, but the Shepherd has just gone from white grapes to talking about Blockbuster with very little flying there. But Blockbuster did actually come up one of the words of the 7 topics. And, for the Shepherd and I, it was, a big part of our teenage years. If you wanted to get a movie out, it was a big thing. Being able to go out and get out the latest movie and sit there, in your bedroom or whatever and watch this movie rather than having to go to the movie theater. I mean, it really defined a whole new era in the pre-Netflix and chill days.
Yes, absolutely. That was the way. If you didn't go to the movie theater and see the movie when it was released, you waited until it came out at Blockbuster. And it was always running down there on, I think it was, maybe Thursday night is when it was released. But everybody went down to Blockbuster on Friday night. And they said, okay, well, let's go down to Blockbuster and let's go ahead and rent a video. And if they had it, great. If they didn't, then you went around the other shelves and you tried to find something to watch. Because you didn't have Netflix. You didn't have Hulu. That was your only source of entertainment unless you had something stored up at your house that was recorded, which if you did, that meant you've already watched it a few times anyway. So you're looking for new entertainment. The sad thing with Blockbuster was they didn't really make their money on rentals. They made their money on all the late fees. And so when you would rent a movie and then, you watched it, maybe most people watched it once, maybe, a handful of people watched it twice, but then you left it sitting on top of your TV. And next thing you know, you forgot to return it. And so now all the late fees popped up. And so now with the Netflix and the Hulu, there are no late fees. You watch something, you watch it. You don't have to worry about returning it to a store at all. You watch it, you're done.
Well, you think about the whole Blockbuster model, right? Now, it's actually, as it worked out in the United States, there were 38,000 people per store.
Wow.
Okay, in terms of how it evened out.
And let's be honest there, that is more than the normal, little township in the United States.
Yeah. But, between 18 and 24 new copies, that was it. So you had 38,000 people per Blockbuster store, but you only ever had 18 to 24 copies of the new content. Yeah. So you'd see that, like, when you went in there, it wasn't like you didn't get your first choice or your second choice or your third choice or your fourth choice. Sometimes you ended up with your 17th choice movie.
Oh, sure. Because if you actually remember back in the Blockbuster days, they always had that return cart.
Right.
And I remember going into Blockbusters, and I never went to the shelves immediately. I went to the return cart to see what was sitting on the return cart, because that's what I figured everybody else is watching. Yeah. And by the way, we don't even want to get off on the video game portion of this, because they were also doing that. And you could go in there and try to find the latest video game you want to play. This is just the movie part, but I always went to the cart and say, what did somebody else return? That's when you looked at that cart.
Yeah. Now, as we get to the end of 7 topics here, like I said, it's a feature which is going to appear randomly, but we're just given 7 words or phrases.
7 topics.
Might be famous people, whatever. It's just going to come up randomly. And like I said, with today we had aliens, Jar Jar Binks, Blockbuster, goats, white grapes, Michael Jackson, and soul food. And so the last topic we are left with, I'm going to leave with the person who was born in Texas and has lived in Texas his whole life, Michael Jackson.
Michael Jackson. So, kind of interesting with the whole Michael Jackson thing. I was never a big Michael Jackson fan, but
You shot me.
I also knew his music. Never honestly owned any of his music, but was obviously familiar with it. I mean, the Thriller album was big. I do remember the song Thriller. I remember watching that on MTV, thinking, hey, this is a good music video. I was actually more of a fan of the Weird Al Yankovic version of the Fat album. No, I'm sorry, not Fat. It was Bad. So the Michael Jackson album, Bad. If you look at the Weird Al Yankovic album, it was called Even Worse.
Right.
And he was dressed just like him.
Right.
And so Michael Jackson, to me, good musician. Never was a big fan of his music, but I could appreciate what he was doing. I was too old to understand the Jackson 5 part of that. So I never really listened to any of the Jackson 5 stuff. But he did a lot of good in the music community, and then everything kind of went south with the accusations and all that stuff. So I kind of backed away from that. When he was kind of declining in popularity in the 90s, I was more of an alternative rock type person in the 90s, so I wasn't paying any attention to that. Then, when you got into the early 2000s, he up and dies. Everybody was kind of upset about that.
He ups and dies.
Yeah, he ups and dies, right? And I wasn't distraught like I was when, Kurt Cobain for Nirvana was killed. And yes, that's controversial, but he didn't kill himself. He was killed. But maybe that's for episode 2 of this. But I didn't get too bent out of shape when the Michael Jackson era ended. It wasn't that big of a deal for me.
Well, I mean, I know as much as you disparage the Michael Jackson era, which might have been from the early 70s, Jackson 5 and all that stuff. And again, we've done literally no research, so you can't blame us. So anyway, from there till 2010, when did Michael Jackson die? A few years ago. So anyway,
a few years
it's as
ago.
exact as we need to get. No, it's exact as we need to get. Anyway. So anyway.
Not today.
Yeah, not today.
Not
Michael
today.
Jackson's got some songs, right?
Last time I checked.
All right, okay. So you and I are going to sing along to a few of these songs. Okay?
Oh, I don't know about all this.
You remember that? A, B, C, blah, da, da, yeah. Remember that bit?
Yeah.
All right, well, that's song number 1. No.
Okay.
And then one, you and I are gonna make a pact.
I don't think that was a Michael Jackson song.
But no, we'll be there. No, that was a Jackson 5 thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're reaching here.
Well, I am, because I was going for the more romantic ones before all the kiddie fiddling stuff came in. So, with Michael Jackson, right? PYT, what does that mean to you?
Not a thing.
Dun, pretty young thing, pretty young thing.
So that must have been
Alright,
a
okay.
UK thing.
Because this is Thriller.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got the Thriller thing, but that always gets brought back up around
Billie
Halloween time.
Jean's not my lover.
Yeah, but
She's just a...
so interesting thing about the song Billie Jean,
Yeah.
Chris Cornell did a extremely good cover version of that to me was better than Michael Jackson.
Well, that's understandable, but was he having to pay child support?
He probably did,
Okay.
and maybe that's why he killed
right.
himself.
Now, would you say Michael Jackson, like the album Bad, right? Which I can't remember whether it came after Thriller and after
Yeah, I don't know.
the
either.
blah 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 albums. Anyway, I don't know. Do you think he had almost become a parody of himself to the point where anything he released was almost more of a not a joke? Because I mean, he was still. I mean, you know, it doesn't matter what I think about Michael Jackson. I mean, he was a great musician. He had a great voice. He had so much popular music. I mean, he will forever be one of the greatest pop icons ever.
Absolutely.
But that doesn't mean we can't poop on him when we talk about some of his music. So
Yeah, and I'm sure that Michael Jackson probably went to Blockbuster Video. He didn't find the video that he wanted to watch. He went to the grocery store, couldn't find white grapes. He looked out at Neverland Ranch and was mad at the goats that he had. And he
couldn't find no soul food.
He couldn't get anybody to cook the soul food. Went and saw episode 1, was mad at Jar Jar Binks. And he just got fed up with the whole thing. I can totally see that.
Yeah. So, again, thank you for tuning in. This is the first episode of 7 topics, whereby the computer generates 7 completely random names or phrases where we're supposed to talk sense about, but you're basically going to get what you're given.
Yep. We appreciate it. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, we're going to play this one back because this might actually be quite a funny thing if we do it properly. I don't know if this one might stick. We might have to redo it, but...
Yeah. And so what the wolf doesn't know is I still haven't hit stop on this, so we're still talking about this. Yeah. And we're not quite sure if this is actually going to be a segment. So maybe we actually need to talk about the fact if we actually want to do this.
Well, I think it's a fun thing if the computer throws up 7 topics, and as you can see, they're not related.
Not at all.
But if we can just, I mean, if we talk about them separately or try and entwine them, it's just a funny type thing. We just talk about some random things like how goats and white grapes, there wasn't any synergy there.
Because of course we totally go into all of our topics, fact check everything, and
absolutely everything.
Yeah. So, thanks for joining us in this little special episode. We hope you enjoyed it.